Detective Sofia Clark stood by the window, watching the rain drumming against the glass. 45 years old, single, with short chestnut hair that had begun to silver at the temples, she had long grown accustomed to the emptiness of her apartment. 3 years after her divorce, endless hours at work, and a case that was dragging on like quicksand. A perfect recipe for a sleepless night. She sipped her cold coffee and reviewed the crime scene photographs again. Richardson's apartment looked like it had been hit by a hurricane. Overturned furniture, scattered belongings, signs of struggle. But no body had been found. Just blood on the carpet and no witnesses. Well, almost no witnesses. The phone rang, cutting through the sound of rain. "Detective Clark," she answered, keeping her eyes on the photographs. "Sofia, it's Martinez. We're about to release the Parrot to an animal shelter. Are you done with him?" Sofia straightened up, gripping the phone. "No, not yet. I'll take him." 40 minutes later, she stood at the precinct, looking at a large cage with an African gray parrot, the only witness to Michael Richardson's disappearance. The gray bird with a bright red tail looked depressed. His feathers were ruffled, and his eyes dull. "He hasn't said anything since we found him," said Martinez, handing over the cage. "The expert says African grays are usually talkative, but this one, probably in shock." "Thanks for holding on to him," Sofia replied, taking the cage. "My gut tells me he saw something important." Martinez shrugged. "The chief thinks you're just looking for excuses not to go home to an empty apartment." She didn't respond. Perhaps he was right. In the car, the parrot sat motionless, watching the raindrops slide down the window through the bars of his cage. Sofia glanced at him occasionally. "You know, I don't like talking about what's bothering me either," she murmured. "But sometimes it helps." The parrot turned his head, his black eyes meeting her gaze. For a moment, Sofia felt like he truly understood her words. She placed the cage in the living room, where light from the street lamp created a soft glow. She put out water, food, and even found online that African grays like nuts. She left a few on the edge of the cage. "Your name is Einstein, right?" she read from the tag on the cage. Not the most original name for a smart parrot. Einstein remained silent, but Sofia noticed how he followed her every movement. His eyes, alive and attentive, scanned her apartment, lingering on the crime scene photos spread on the table, then on her police badge. "We'll try to find your owner, I promise," she said, preparing for bed. "Or figure out what happened to him." At 3 in the morning, Sofia was awakened by a hoarse cry. She jumped up, pulling her gun from under her pillow before realizing the sound came from the parrot. "Stop! Please stop!" Einstein was screaming in a voice that sounded remarkably like a human's. "Blood! So much blood!" Sofia froze mid-step, feeling goosebumps run down her spine. The parrot was fluttering his wings, hitting against the bars of the cage. "Einstein," she whispered, slowly approaching. "Einstein, it's okay. You're safe." The parrot suddenly froze, turning his head at an unnatural angle. "Red jacket," he muttered suddenly in a completely different voice. "Red jacket and silver knife." Sofia felt her heart rate accelerate. She carefully turned on the voice recorder on her phone. "What did you see, Einstein? Who was wearing the red jacket?" But the parrot fell silent again, as if his self-preservation instincts had taken over his trauma. He just stared at her with his shining eyes that seemed to hide more secrets than she could imagine. That night, Sofia never went back to sleep. In the morning, she called an ornithologist, a specialist in parrot behavior, and made an appointment. She knew that Einstein was the key to solving Richardson's disappearance. Now she just needed to find a way to unlock the secrets hidden in his feathered memory. And the parrot watched her through the bars of the cage, keeping his secrets until the right moment. Dr. Elizabeth Foster was not the person Sofia had expected to see. Instead of a stereotypical bespectacled scientist, before her stood a woman in her 50s with bright purple hair gathered in a casual bun, wearing paint-stained denim overalls. "So, Detective," Elizabeth said, leaning toward Einstein's cage. "You believe this fellow might be a witness to a crime?" Sophia nodded, feeling somewhat foolish. She hadn't mentioned her nighttime conversation with the parrot. It was too risky to appear crazy in front of an expert. He was the only living creature in an apartment where a murder might have taken place. Elizabeth gave an odd smile. "You know, African gray parrots possess the intelligence of a 5-year-old child. They don't just repeat words, they understand context." She carefully opened the cage door and extended her arm. To Sophia's surprise, the parrot willingly stepped onto the woman's wrist. "Hello, handsome," Elizabeth said in a gentle voice. "What's troubling you?" Einstein remained silent, but his eyes darted actively between the two women. "How old is he?" Sophia asked, watching this strange pair. "I'd say about 15. They can live up to 60. Elizabeth gently stroked the feathers on the parrot's neck. Parrots form strong bonds with their owners. If something happened to his master, he might be in deep depression. Sophia shared the recording of the nighttime episode. Elizabeth listened carefully, showing no surprise. "Traumatic events can change birds' behavior just as they do humans," she explained. "They experience post-traumatic stress, nightmares. It's entirely possible that Einstein is repeating what he heard and saw." "Then we need to make him talk again," Sophia said. "How can we do that?" Elizabeth carefully placed the parrot back in his cage. "Force him, no. Create a safe environment where he'll want to talk. Yes. Trust, Detective. That's what he needs." Returning home with a stack of books about parrots and a package of special treats, Sophia felt strange. She, an experienced detective with 15 years of service, would be trying to win the trust of a bird. Her superiors would laugh at her. However, the trembling in the parrot's voice when he cried "so much blood" was too real to ignore. Over the next 3 days, Sophia slowly built a connection with Einstein. She moved the cage closer to her desk, left the door open so he could fly out if he wished. She spoke to him in a calm voice, read case notes aloud, as if discussing them with a colleague. Richardson was a financial consultant, 42 years old, divorced, she pondered, reviewing files. Coworkers say he'd seemed tense lately. Some files disappeared from his computer. Einstein listened, tilting his head. Sometimes he repeated individual words, files, computer, but without context. Other times he simply sat on the edge of the desk, watching her work. The breakthrough came on the 4th day. Sophia was studying Richardson's photograph, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a friendly smile. "Who wanted to harm you, Michael?" she murmured, tiredly rubbing her eyes. "Numbers don't match." Einstein suddenly spoke in a clear, confident voice, different from his nighttime lament. "Trust fund, trust fund." Sophia froze, afraid to make any sudden movement. "What trust fund, Einstein?" she asked quietly. "Passwords in the book," continued the parrot, spreading his wings. "Brandy says, 'Give me the money.'" Brandy, a name that hadn't appeared in any report. Sophia slowly picked up her phone and turned on the voice recorder again. "Who is Brandy?" she asked, trying to control her excitement. The parrot suddenly made a sound like a telephone ringing, and then spoke in an entirely different voice, feminine, with a slight rasp. "I know about the Caymans, Mike. Better share, or your clients will find out too." Sophia felt goosebumps run down her spine. The Caymans, an offshore zone known for tax evasion schemes. "Red jacket," Einstein continued in his normal voice. "She always wears red." Sophia rushed to her computer. 20 minutes later, she had an answer. Brenda "Brandy" Kowalski, Richardson's former assistant, fired 6 months ago. In her social media photo, she was wearing a bright red blazer. The next morning, Sofia sat in her car, watching Brenda's house. She had left Einstein at home, feeling a strange concern for his safety. The bird had become more than just evidence. He had become her partner, the only one who had truly helped advance the investigation. When Brenda emerged from the house, Sofia noticed two things: a red blazer and a wheeled suitcase. She was planning to flee. "Police," Sofia called out, showing her badge. "Brenda Kowalski, I need to ask you a few questions." Something cold flashed in the woman's eyes, a familiar look, fear mixed with calculation. Sofia had seen this expression hundreds of times, usually right before a suspect did something very stupid. "What's this about, officer?" Brenda asked, gripping the suitcase handle tighter. "About Michael Richardson," Sofia replied, keeping her hand near her gun. "And about the trust fund in the Caymans." Brenda's face changed, transforming into a mask of fury. "How did you?" She didn't finish her sentence, suddenly throwing the suitcase at Sofia and taking off running. But the detective was ready for this. Within seconds, she caught up with Brenda, pinning her to the ground. "Brenda Kowalski, you're under arrest on suspicion of kidnapping and possible murder of Michael Richardson." Later, when bloodstained clothes, documents for new passports, and access to offshore accounts were found in the suitcase, Sofia returned home with a sense of duty fulfilled. Brenda confessed that Richardson had refused to give her a share of the money he was laundering through offshore accounts. She had planned to blackmail him, but the situation spiraled out of control. Richardson's body was found buried in a forest outside the city. "We solved the case," Sofia said quietly to Einstein, who was happily hopping on the back of the sofa. "Thanks to you." The parrot tilted his head, looking at her with his intelligent eyes. "Sofia, good," he unexpectedly said. "Sofia, friend." She froze, feeling something warm spreading in her chest. For the first time in many years, she didn't want to return to an empty apartment. Now there was someone waiting for her there. Sofia was shuffling through documents on her desk, occasionally glancing at Einstein, who now moved freely around the apartment. 2 weeks had passed since Brenda Kowalski's arrest, but something still troubled her. Despite Brenda's confession and the evidence found, some detail didn't fit into the overall picture. "Something doesn't add up," she muttered, twirling a pen in her hand. "Doesn't add up," Einstein repeated, landing on the edge of the desk and examining the photographs with interest. "Numbers don't match." The parrot had been repeating this phrase often, but Sofia still couldn't understand its meaning. Brenda had killed Richardson over money. That much was obvious. But what numbers didn't match? Her thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. Einstein flinched and quickly flew to the top of the wardrobe, where he liked to hide when feeling threatened. "Detective Clark," Sofia answered, watching the parrot's nervous reaction. "Sofia, this is Ramirez from Forensic Accounting. We've completed the analysis of Richardson's financial documents." Sofia straightened up, feeling her pulse quicken. "And what did you find?" "Strange things. The sums he transferred to the Caymans don't match those that reached his clients' accounts. There's a discrepancy of almost $1 million. So he was stealing from his clients? Or someone was stealing from him?" Ramirez replied. "It's odd that Brenda didn't mention this during interrogation. If she knew about the offshore accounts, she should have known about the missing million." After the call, Sofia sat thinking. Einstein carefully descended from the wardrobe and approached her, tilting his head. "Brandy lies," he suddenly said in a voice that sounded remarkably similar to Richardson's. "Brandy works with Nick." Sofia froze. "Which Nick?" "Einstein?" she asked carefully, activating the voice recorder. The parrot fell silent, as if trying to remember. Then he suddenly spread his wings and spoke again. "Nick says, did she do everything right? Will they find the body?" Brandy answers, "Don't worry, darling. Everything's going according to plan." Sofia felt a chill run down her spine. She quickly opened the case file. There was no Nick among Brenda's acquaintances. However, Nicholas Weber, she read aloud, Richardson's partner in the financial firm. Einstein jumped up at hearing this name and let out a piercing cry. Nick, Nick, Silverknife. He circled the room in panic. Sophia carefully approached the parrot, who now sat on the back of the sofa, trembling. Einstein, did you see Nick in Richardson's apartment that night? The parrot looked at her and suddenly spoke with surprising clarity. Nick held him. Brandy cut. Red jacket, silver knife, so much blood. The next morning, Sophia sat in her boss's office, Captain Morris. He looked at her with a mixture of skepticism and concern. Clark, are you serious? You want to reopen a closed case based on the words of a parrot? Sir, the financial evidence confirms that Brenda couldn't have acted alone, and Nicholas Weber is the only one who had the same access to offshore accounts as Richardson. Sophia tried to speak calmly, though she felt herself blushing with embarrassment. It's not just the parrot's words, but real evidence. Morris sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Fine, question Weber, but unofficially. If he's involved, he shouldn't suspect we're checking him out. That same day, Sophia called Weber and arranged a meeting, using the pretext of finding important documents of Richardson's that might concern the firm. Before the meeting, she spoke with Einstein again, who had become noticeably calmer after his revelations. Tell me, friend, what does Nick look like? She asked. Big, shiny hair, watch, the parrot replied, swinging on his perch. Watch ticks loudly. The meeting with Weber took place in a small cafe. He turned out to be a tall man with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch that indeed ticked loudly in the silence between their phrases. Everything just as Einstein had described. Thank you for making time, Mr. Weber, Sophia began. It's been a few weeks since Richardson's disappearance, and we're still working through some details. Weber nodded, turning his coffee cup. Of course, I understand. Terrible situation with Brenda. I never would have thought she was capable of such a thing. Were you close to her? Sophia asked, carefully observing his reaction. To Brenda, he laughed too quickly. Barely knew her. She was Mike's assistant, not mine. Lie. Sophia felt it, but continued. What about the offshore accounts? Did you know about them? For a moment, fear flashed in Weber's eyes. What offshore accounts? In the Cayman Islands. Our financial expertise revealed that about $1 million went missing. Money that Richardson transferred, but that never reached the client's accounts. Weber tensed, his fingers tightly gripping the cup. Detective, I don't understand what you're getting at. Mike handled his business. I handled mine. Perhaps. Sophia leaned closer. But we recently learned that Brenda wasn't alone that night. Weber stood up abruptly, spilling coffee. I need to go. I have a meeting. As he hurriedly left the cafe, Sophia noticed him taking out his phone. She didn't need eavesdropping devices to guess who he would be calling. Returning to her apartment, she felt anxious. If Weber and Brenda were indeed accomplices, they might try to remove all possible evidence, including Einstein. When she unlocked the door, something immediately felt wrong. The apartment was too quiet. Not a sound from the parrot. Einstein, she called, drawing her gun. The apartment was empty, the cage overturned, and the living room window open. On the windowsill, she noticed several gray feathers and drops of blood. Sophia's heart contracted with horror. Einstein was gone. Her only witness, and she suddenly realized, her friend. Sophia immediately called for backup, but she knew time was working against them. If Weber had taken the parrot, it wasn't to keep him as a pet. Examining the apartment for evidence of a break-in, she noticed something strange. One of Einstein's feathers was stuck to the windowsill, not with blood, but with something that looked like glue, as if the parrot had deliberately left it there. It made no sense unless... She remembered how Elizabeth had said African Greys had the intelligence equivalent to a 5-year-old child. If Einstein understood what was happening. Sophia grabbed her phone and called Elizabeth Foster. "If a parrot is trying to leave a clue, what do you think he might do?" she asked, barely waiting for an answer. "Parrots have a phenomenal memory for places," Elizabeth quickly replied, driving in her car. "Especially places where they feel safe. If Einstein wanted to tell you something, he would use what he knows best: repetition and imitation." Sophia examined the windowsill again. The glued feather pointed downward, like an arrow. "I'll call you back," she said, cutting off her conversation with Elizabeth. Sophia crouched down and looked in the direction the feather was pointing. Below, 2 buildings away from her home, was a small park where she often walked, sometimes even taking Einstein in his cage to get some fresh air. Her heart pounded. It could be a random coincidence, but her detective instincts screamed that the feather wasn't accidentally pointing there. Not waiting for backup, Sophia grabbed her gun and rushed out of the apartment. The park was almost deserted at this time. Just a few mothers with small children near the playground and an elderly man feeding pigeons. She slowly circled the area, trying not to draw unnecessary attention. After a few minutes, she heard a familiar sound, a light clicking of the beak that Einstein made when he was nervous. The sound came from an abandoned maintenance shed standing at the edge of the park. Sophia approached cautiously, holding her gun ready. The shed door was slightly ajar. She took a deep breath and opened it with a swift movement. Inside, in a cage much smaller than the one in which he lived at Sophia's, sat Einstein. His feathers were ruffled, and there were several small wounds on his wing. But he was alive. When the parrot saw Sophia, he excitedly fluttered his wings and made the sound of a police siren, one of many he had learned to imitate during this time. "Quiet, friend," Sophia whispered, looking around. "Who brought you here?" "Nick will come," Einstein suddenly said clearly. "Nick will come at sunset. Has to finish the job." Sophia froze. Sunset, less than an hour away. Weber was planning to return and, most likely, get rid of the inconvenient witness forever. She quickly called the station. "I need a capture team at Liberty Park immediately. The suspect in Richardson's murder, Nicholas Weber, should appear here soon." After unlocking the cage, Sophia carefully took Einstein out. The parrot immediately clung to her shoulder, pressing against her neck. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." She wanted to take him to a veterinarian immediately, but realized that Weber was their only chance to close the case. If he showed up and found the cage empty, he would disappear forever. Sophia made a decision. "Einstein," she said, looking directly into his intelligent eyes, "I need your help one more time." She carefully returned the parrot to the cage, leaving the door slightly open so he could escape if he wanted. Then she found a hiding place behind some bushes, from where she had a good view of the maintenance shed, and prepared to wait. The sky over the park gradually turned dark orange when a tall figure appeared at the entrance. Nicholas Weber looked around, making sure no one was nearby, and quickly walked toward the shed. Sophia gripped her gun, watching him approach. When Weber opened the door and entered, she heard Einstein speaking, clearly, calmly, in Richardson's voice. "Nick, did you think I wouldn't find out about the money? You stole $1 million from me, for God's sake." Sophia froze. The parrot wasn't just repeating. He was reproducing an actual dialogue he had heard before Richardson's death. And he was doing it deliberately, knowing it would provoke Weber. "Shut up," came Weber's furious shout. "Shut up, damn bird." Sophia burst out of her hiding place and rushed to the shed as Weber pulled a gun from his pocket and aimed it at the cage. At the last moment, Einstein flew out through the slightly open door, and Sophia was already at the threshold, aiming her weapon at Weber. "Police, drop your weapon," she shouted. Weber turned sharply, his face contorted with rage. For a moment, Sophia thought he would try to shoot, but then she saw the man's expression change as other officers appeared behind her. Nicholas Weber, you're under arrest for complicity in the murder of Michael Richardson, Sophia said as Weber slowly dropped to his knees, throwing down his weapon. As he was led away in handcuffs, Einstein landed on Sophia's shoulder as if it was the safest place in the world. "It's all right, friend," she whispered, gently stroking his feathers. "You did it." The following days flew by in a whirlwind of paperwork, interrogations, and medical examinations, both for Einstein and for evidence against Weber and Brenda. The veterinarian confirmed that the parrot's physical injuries were minor, a few scratches on his wing and mild stress, but nothing that time and peace wouldn't heal. Weber confessed that he and Brenda were indeed lovers and had been siphoning money from Richardson's offshore accounts together. When Richardson began to suspect the theft, they decided to get rid of him. Weber had planned to take all the money and flee abroad with Brenda, but first, he needed to remove the last piece of evidence, the parrot who could imitate voices and repeat their conversation with Richardson. Elizabeth came to visit Sophia a few days after Weber's arrest to check on Einstein's condition. "He's showing remarkable resilience," she said, watching the parrot calmly sitting on the kitchen counter while Sophia prepared breakfast. "Most birds would show signs of stress for months after such a traumatic experience." "He's special," Sophia replied, offering the parrot a piece of apple, which he carefully took from her fingers. "Have you found his real owner?" Elizabeth asked. Sophia shook her head. Richardson had no other relatives except a cousin in Oregon. She said she can't take the parrot, she's allergic. "So what are you going to do?" Elizabeth glanced at the parrot, who was now sitting on Sophia's shoulder, trying to groom her hair with his beak. "Well," Sophia smiled, "I think he's already chosen his home." Rain gently drummed against the window as Sophia sat in the evening with a cup of tea, looking at the closed file on the Richardson case. Her apartment no longer seemed empty and quiet. Cross-legged on the couch, she flipped through papers while Einstein sat beside her, watching her every move. "You know," she said, scratching his neck, "without you, we would never have solved this murder. You're officially the best witness I've ever worked with." Einstein tilted his head, as if understanding her words, and unexpectedly spoke in Sophia's voice. "Einstein, partner. Einstein, friend." Sophia smiled, feeling something warm spreading in her chest. After many years of loneliness, she had found a partner in the most unexpected place, in a small gray parrot with a mind no less intelligent than many humans. "Yes, friend," she said quietly. "You're my partner. And my friend." Through the window, she could see the dark sky where stars were gradually appearing. The rain was subsiding, as were the anxieties that had haunted her for years. Sofia Clark was no longer alone. Einstein made a soft, contented sound and pressed against her hand. Perhaps the first 45 years of her life hadn't been ideal, but the next ones, with her feathered friend by her side, promised to be much brighter. Spring brought to the city not only the scent of flowers and warm sunshine. For Sophia and Einstein, it became the beginning of a new life. The park below their windows had turned green, and now they often walked there, the parrot sitting freely on her shoulder, occasionally flying to the nearest branch, but always returning to his human. After the Richardson case, something had changed at the police station. Captain Morris still grumbled when Sophia occasionally brought Einstein to work, but he couldn't deny the bird's usefulness. The parrot had become an unofficial department employee, and his unique ability to reproduce exact dialogues proved invaluable during suspect interrogations. "He does it deliberately," Sophia told Elizabeth one day during her visit. "He hears when someone is lying and starts repeating phrases the person said earlier, revealing inconsistencies." Elizabeth smiled, watching Einstein sort through the colored blocks she had brought him as a gift. He skillfully arranged them by color. African greys are incredibly intelligent creatures. Einstein seems to have developed his analytical abilities working with you. A mutually beneficial partnership. Lying. Einstein suddenly spoke, imitating the voice of the last suspect Sofia had interrogated. "I'm not lying. Honestly. No, I'm not lying." Sofia laughed. "See? He even captures the intonations. I've been thinking about hiring him a lawyer so he could give official testimony in court." Their laughter was interrupted by a phone call. Sofia glanced at the screen. It was Morris. "Clark." Her voice instantly became serious. "There's a situation at Williams Art Gallery on Maple Street. Looks like a robbery gone wrong. There's a hostage, an elderly security guard. We need a negotiator." Sofia glanced at the clock, 6 in the evening. She had planned to spend the evening at home, but work is work. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she replied and turned to Elizabeth. "Sorry, I have to go." "Of course," Elizabeth nodded. "Want me to stay with Einstein?" "It's no trouble." Sofia was about to agree, but Einstein suddenly flew from the table and perched on her shoulder, clutching the collar of her shirt. "Looks like he has other plans," Sofia smiled. "I think he'll come with me. The station is used to him by now." Half an hour later, she was standing near the gallery surrounded by police. The windows were dark, but inside, a flashlight beam occasionally flickered. Morris briefly briefed her on the situation. A lone perpetrator, probably armed. The guard was glimpsed near the window, appears unharmed. No communication established yet. Sofia nodded, gently stroking Einstein, who sat quietly on her shoulder, observing everything around them. "I'll try to make contact." She approached the police car with a loudspeaker. "This is Detective Sofia Clark. I'd like to speak with the person inside the gallery. We can resolve this peacefully." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared in the window. "I didn't mean for this to happen," came a trembling male voice. "I just wanted to get my painting back. He attacked me." Sofia exchanged glances with Morris. "Your painting?" she asked into the loudspeaker. "My painting. My work. Williams stole it from me, like he did from others. Said it was worthless, and now he's selling it for thousands." Sofia realized the situation was more complex than a simple robbery. She turned off the loudspeaker and returned to Morris. "Looks like an angry artist, not a professional robber. Let me go in and talk to him. If it's really his work, maybe I can convince him." Morris frowned. "Too risky, Clark. And don't even think about taking that bird with you." But Einstein suddenly flew from her shoulder and perched on the roof of the police car, clearly indicating he had no intention of going inside. "See?" Sofia gave a weak smile. "He's smarter than some of my colleagues." After much argument, she finally received permission to enter the gallery. Unarmed, with a radio transmitter and wearing a bulletproof vest. As she approached the entrance, Einstein sat quietly on the car roof, watching her with his attentive eyes. Inside the gallery, it was dark, with only dim emergency lighting casting long shadows on walls covered with paintings. Sofia moved slowly, keeping her hands visible. "I'm Detective Clark," she said into the silence. "I came alone, without a weapon. I want to talk." From behind a column emerged a man, slim, about 40, with disheveled hair and a paint-stained sweater. In one hand, he held a medium-sized painting, in the other, a crowbar. "Stay there," he ordered, nervously waving the crowbar. "Don't come any closer." "I won't," Sofia replied calmly. "Where's the security guard?" The man nodded toward a storage room. "In there? I didn't hurt him. He came at me. I was just defending myself." Sofia noticed the man's hands were trembling, and there was a fresh scratch on his temple. He didn't look like someone who came here intending to hurt anyone. "What's your name?" she asked. "Alex. Alex Griffin." "Good, Alex. Tell me about the painting." His face changed, his eyes filling with pain and anger. "It's my work." He turned the canvas toward Sofia. It depicted a woman standing on a bridge, facing a sunset. "I brought it to Williams 3 years ago. He said it was amateurish, not worth exhibiting." Then yesterday, I was walking by and saw it in the window with a $15,000 price tag and another artist's signature. Sophia nodded, gradually moving closer to him. That's terrible, Alex. I understand your outrage. But taking a hostage isn't the solution. What was I supposed to do? He asked desperately. Go to the police. With what evidence? I don't even have a photo of this painting left. Sophia paused, thoughtful. He did have a point. Proving authorship without evidence would be impossible. I'll help you, Alex, she finally said. But first, you need to release the guard and put down the crowbar. Alex looked uncertain. How do I know you're not deceiving me? Sophia met his gaze. I give you my word. We'll find out the truth. If the painting is truly yours, we'll prove it. For several tense seconds, Alex hesitated, then slowly lowered the crowbar. Okay, he quietly agreed. But I'm not giving up the painting. 10 minutes later, the situation was resolved. The guard, a bit dazed but unharmed, emerged onto the street, and Alex, still holding the painting, surrendered to the police. Sophia insisted he not be handcuffed and that the painting not be seized as evidence, for now. When she exited the gallery, Einstein flew from the police car roof and landed on her shoulder, happily clicking his beak. It's all right, friend, she said quietly to him. Another case where we need to find the truth. The next day, Sophia sat in William's office, the gallery owner, a portly man with a self-satisfied smile who looked more like a banker than an art person. This is absurd, he snorted, reviewing Alex's statement. I've never seen this man. I acquired the painting from a young artist, Jason Price, 6 months ago. May I see the purchase documents? Sophia calmly asked. Williams shrugged and pulled a folder from his drawer. Here you go. Everything's legal. Einstein, who had been sitting on the back of a chair, suddenly flew over and perched on the desk, tilting his head and examining the papers. Excuse me, Williams said irritably. Is this a health inspection? Birds don't belong here. He's with me, Sophia replied, reviewing the documents. Don't worry, he won't soil your precious papers. The documents did indeed look plausible, but something bothered Sophia. She was about to return the folder when Einstein suddenly made a sound like laughter and clearly said, Forgery. Another forgery. 8. No, 9 artists. Poor kids, I told them. Your works are worthless. Williams recoiled, his face turning white. What is this? Make him shut up. Sophia looked carefully at the gallery owner, then at the parrot, who was now imitating a voice very similar to Williams. Where is this voice from, Einstein? She asked quietly. Williams' office. The parrot replied in his normal voice, then switched back to imitation. In 6 months, no one will remember whose work it was. We'll change the signature, date, and voila. Price gets his 15%, and I get the rest. Williams grabbed the desk, his face burning with anger. This bird is lying. It's impossible. Actually, it's entirely possible, Sophia calmly replied. African greys have phenomenal memory and mimicry abilities. Was Einstein here before? I don't know, Williams muttered, confused. Sophia remembered that Alex's statement mentioned he had brought the painting to the gallery 3 years ago. At that time, Einstein was living with Richardson. Suddenly it dawned on her. Einstein, did you come here with Richardson? The parrot excitedly fluttered his wings. With Mike. Mike loved paintings. Mike came here often. Sophia turned to Williams, who now looked like he might be sick. Mr. Williams, did you know Michael Richardson, the financial consultant? He was my client, the gallery owner barely audibly replied. I see, Sophia nodded. And what did he do at your gallery? He was interested in art, bought works, invested. Williams wiped sweat from his forehead. Look, I don't understand what you're getting at. But Sophia had already figured it out. She stood up and placed her business card in front of Williams. I think we'll need to conduct a thorough investigation into the provenance of all paintings in your gallery, and possibly check all financial transactions between you and Richardson. I suspect Alex isn't the only artist whose work you've appropriated." Williams opened his mouth to object, but then simply slumped into his chair, defeated. Einstein flew from the desk and perched on Sofia's shoulder, holding his head high, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. A week later, Alex was cleared of all charges, and his painting was officially recognized as his property. The investigation into Williams' activities revealed an entire fraud scheme. He had systematically deceived young artists, rejecting their works as unprofessional, then selling them under different names, changing signatures and dates. Richardson, as it turned out, was his accomplice, laundering money through the gallery, financing some fictional art projects. And although Richardson was no longer among the living, Williams had to answer for all their crimes. He received 5 years in prison and had to pay compensation to all the defrauded artists. "How did you guess that Williams was connected to the Richardson case?" Morris asked when Sofia showed him the report. "I didn't guess," she smiled. "Einstein suggested it." She reached out and gently stroked the parrot's gray feathers as he sat on the edge of her desk, curiously examining photos of paintings seized during the gallery raid. "You know, Morris, sometimes the best witnesses are those no one notices." They took Einstein to meetings without worrying he might understand or remember something. But he not only remembered, he preserved those memories for years and was able to reproduce them when needed. The captain shook his head, impressed. "I think we need to allocate funds for an official position for this wing detective." He carefully patted the parrot's back. "And for special food." Einstein, hearing this, proudly puffed up his chest and imitated a police siren, making everyone in the department laugh. That evening, Sofia sat on the couch, absently flipping through TV channels. Einstein dozed nearby, his head tucked under his wing. His quiet, peaceful breathing was soothing. She put down the remote and looked at her feathered friend. How many lives had he saved? How many criminals had he helped put behind bars? And all this simply by observing, remembering, understanding. "Thank you, friend," she whispered, gently stroking him as he slept. "Without you, I would never have solved these cases." Einstein ruffled his sleepy feathers, opened one eye, and spoke in a voice filled with warmth. "Sofia and Einstein, team," he said, then added in his own words, "forever friends." She smiled, feeling something warm flowing through her chest. No one in the world would believe that a parrot could become a detective's best friend and partner. No one except her. And looking at the sunlight breaking through the window, Sofia knew their adventures were just beginning.